Hello investors and welcome back to Just Renting Stocks. Let's talk about Proterra. No long introductions, let's get straight into it. Automotive News published an article talking about Tesla stock drops and drags down other EV makers. I thought this was very interesting because today I was pointing this out in the Discord, just making everyone aware that it really looked like these two were correlated. And yesterday I mentioned that it would be really interesting to listen to the Tesla call. And I do believe that this is having an impact because of the news that came out about supply chain warnings. And this is also a theme that we heard in the Q3 earnings call for Proterra, that they were going to potentially have supply chain issues that were going to impact anywhere from 5 to 10 buses and even had impact on their battery builds on some of those key components. Now, if you look at the change of percentage for these EVs, you can see it was another big red day for the EV market. It looks like the market is still trying to find the bottom. There's major adjustments going through. Now, that's not the only thing that potentially can have an impact on the price in the short term. I would say that you need to keep an eye on this Ukrainian development that's happening and be careful with some of the misinformation and leakage of falsehoods out there. So there may be some false information that comes out that it doesn't really matter, right? This fear that can be in the market can drive the price down. So are we at the bottom yet? Not completely sure. Decisions regarding monetary policy implementation looks like they still have to do some discussions and more information to come out in March. So Fed Chair Powell wanted to make sure that he stayed humble and nimble, and it looks like inflation is going to be more persistent and prolonged maybe throughout the rest of this year. We might not see inflation come down until next year. Now, what does that mean? Pay attention to those CPI readings or numbers that come out, and there could be some market fluctuation or volatility. So expect to hear more about inflation and its relation to gross margins, the impact between cost of goods sold, how much the company is having to pay for things, and that those costs could potentially increase, which has an impact on what they originally modeled as far as projections on what they were going to be able to do. We're not hitting the gross margin 4% target this year already for Proterra, so just pay attention in this next quarterly update to see where we stand as far as gross margin expansion, because it'll be important that that continues to increase over time. Now, everyone knows that Proterra has just really been knocking it out of the park with positive PR for quite some time, and put on top of that, we've got several institutional investors that have recently added to their position. So let's take a look at that across the board. Of the top 20, you can see there was a 23.47% increase. We have 44.8% institutional ownership with Proterra, so that is relatively high. And let's take a look at the analyst price targets, just so that way we can see at the end of this year, where do we expect the price target to go? And then next year, this is the end of 2022, we are expecting to basically double revenue. You can see significant upside here, 66% upside. I would say in the not only in the revenue, but I would say that upside also applies to the share price of where it stands now. So we'll take a look at that in just a second. But the high estimates here, I have 72 million that they need to hit this price target of 246, which is in their slide deck projection for the end of this previous year to close out the quarter. And then you can see 2022, they have a high estimate of 425. Now 72 million, we got a low estimate of 65 million and 67 million on analysts. Looks like analysts aren't expecting them to exceed the 246 because that would put them on the high side as far as the projections that I have. Now, the analyst price targets have went down. So we had some reports in the Barron report. I haven't seen too many recent price targets that were too much above $11. So the price targets have come down. We did have that Bank of America article some time ago that said this would be a better buy in the $8 range. And who knew that we would have this completely remodeling of price targets. Now, it's my opinion that Proterra Transit is one of the most important lines of business right now because it makes up 80% of the revenue. But the decision to leave the company is not the result of any disagreement with the company or the board of directors. So it could have been that he got poached, that he found a better opportunity, but there has been a lot of changeover, especially in the senior management, and who knows what's happening at lower levels. But how do you find out? Are there any tools in which you can find out more information on what's happening within the company? Glassdoor could possibly be a tool that you could use. Of course, there's no way to audit this to see if it's real truthful information, but you have to believe that if people took the time to fill out some of this information, and the date that's associated with the information is what I'd look at. But I would encourage you to not only go on the interviews tab and read some of the comments there, but I would also go through the reviews tab and see what some of the people within the company have said about the management. And I'll tell you now, it doesn't look good. And before I wrote any of my comments in the Discord or on the community tab, and you can see the dates of those, I did not look at this information. So I just pulled this up like yesterday and looked at this. And some of the questions that I asked investor relations, I had not reviewed these prior to asking those questions, but it does lead me to believe. And of course, every company has room to improve. You can still like the business model and know that there's always going to be improvements that management, senior management, or even some of the workers can make. It looks like they've got an opportunity for improvement there. So I would tell you to take a look at that. Now, the last week, like I was saying, great news constantly coming out. Here is that succession planning. I've talked about this in my previous videos on what my thoughts are of the leadership team and some of the concerns, questions that I had, and even connections that I was making with poaching from, I believe, software business. Was it IBM? I can't remember. Don't hold me to that one. But let's take a look at Twitter and see what came out today. They did send out a press release that was a little bit confusing, and then they followed it up with another tweet. And this looked like it had a caption from Chris. It looks like a new format that they're using, but Proterra Energy. And they also posted an open job position, which I want to tell you a little bit about that and why it's important. But I like the way that they formatted this. I think that it was a little confusing. People thought that they might be trying to put solar panels on buses. That's not what's happening. Nothing's changing from the business lines of Proterra. I think they wanted to try and communicate that they have this ecosystem now, right? To be able to power the buses even if power goes out. Let's take a look at the price action, because this is very interesting that it's been a low of $6.65, and this thing has been as high, you already know, upwards of $30. So the price action, I think people are getting into this trade and they're getting out of it pretty quick. This is even potentially getting shorted, but you can see the average volume is up significantly. There's been more trades, I believe, and it has to do with the significant price action. People not able to find support. They get into this play and then they're getting out of it. Now, I did want to talk about an open position because this popped up just real quick. The only reason I bring this to your attention is it does give us some information that the company is using smart tools like Salesforce. I thought that it was very interesting to find out that the sales team or sales director, it does look like they're using Salesforce. I think that this is a sophisticated tool. I was encouraged to see this in the job description, and this allows them to keep track of progress of business that they've captured and feeds in to metrics like backlog. So I thought that it was encouraging. Feel free to check that out. Now, the final thing I want to talk with you about, and then I want to get this video to you. We have not established a buy range because it keeps dropping and there's so many risks. The risk, Eastern Europe, we've got problems with the supply chain. We've got a challenging Q4. I gave you a price target, and I try to do this, right? Because if you're in a situation where you can buy, I want to try and get you in as low as possible. And we made a buy range between 765 and 755. It hit that. It did not hold support, and most of you knew to get out of this play because there was just too much volatility until we found a level of support that was lower. And I believe I said this 6 is the new 8. So now we're looking at the $6 range. That looks like that is the point to add, but I can't even say that until we get a little bit more stability in the market. You could say that it's a no-brainer to add at this level, to not have any fear. I want you to make those decisions on your own. I've put a line down here at $6.65. There's just too much risk in the market right now, leading up to March, leading up to the earnings. to where I could definitively say that this is a strong buy. I think that there's going to be potentials, and you definitely want to cost average into any position. If you are able to get this in the $6 range, I think that's fantastic. I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to come back and look at this video. You know I love chasing this all the way down and hoping you guys get it at the low price. We're going to have to come back and look and see how this pans out. You're going to have to follow the markets. They are so volatile right now. I do want to say thank you so much for your support in the channel consistently. Thank you for those thumbs up. Be sure to comment below. Tell me what you think. Where is the bottom on this? And I'll see you in the next video.